Hello, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome back to the Intelligence Perspective. My name is Danny Ramon. I'm the Intelligence and Response Manager at Overhaul, and I've been studying supply chain intelligence for the last 11 years now. Today, we're going to discuss strategic or fraudulent theft methods and some ways that you can spot them at pickup. Let's see here. So first of all, we want to talk a little bit about what strategic or fraudulent theft types are. And essentially, you can look at it instead of stealing the tractor and trailer whenever there's an opportunity when it's left unattended while it's traveling from point A to B. Instead, they're going to go ahead and set an appointment essentially to go ahead and steal your freight. They do this via various methods, whether it's double or triple brokering or staking out internet load boards. And they're going to usually send a driver with a falsified identity or fraudulent carrier information over to your yard to pick up that cargo. So there's obviously some things that you can do to spot that type of activity before they depart with your cargo. And we're going to take a look at some of those red flags today. We're going to go ahead and bring up some slides now. And there's just a couple of slides here with some visual aids. And I want to talk about first the red flags that are very easy to spot that don't take any really kind of due diligence or effort other than just paying attention. One of the first ones is to make sure that the driver information, the carrier information, tractor and trailer information that you were given before the drivers arrived at pickup is going to match the driver and the tractor and the trailer and the carrier information when they actually show up to pick up that cargo. If it doesn't match, you're going to need to make some calls and find out why. It may be a legitimate reason, but if you're going to be a belt and suspenders, security-minded individual like myself, I'd go ahead and turn that away. You want everything to match and line up. Now, when they do arrive, let's say everything does match up, you want to make sure that that driver actually matches the driver's license that he's presenting. If you can see in this picture that we're showing here, that driver is not the same as the person who's pictured in that commercial driver's license. Definitely a red flag. When we're talking about that, we also want to talk about other red flags when it comes to a driver's license. That would be if the driver shows up with a temporary issue or paper driver's license or a driver's license that appears fake. We have seen a lot of these actors show up to perform these thefts or show up to pick up these cargoes with fake IDs. And from what we've been told by our contacts in law enforcement, they're actually very good fake IDs. So if at all possible, especially if you're suspecting that you may be a victim of this type of theft, obtaining an ID scanner that can scan the magnetic stripe on IDs from all over the country and determine if they're legitimate or not is definitely going to be a good investment for you. But going on from that, we've also got the markings on the tractor. Every commercial tractor in the United States is required to have certain information on the side of that tractor. That's going to be the carrier name, the US DOT number for that carrier, and several other licensing numbers that are going to be on there. You want that to be on there in a permanent sort of sign, whether that's a professional decal or it's just painted on there or it's a vinyl wrap. You want to make sure that that's permanently affixed there. As you can see in this photo, we've got essentially a piece of printer paper that's been stuck up onto the driver's side door of the tractor. We've seen even worse than that. We've actually seen printer paper duct taped up there with just the information written in Sharpie. That is a huge red flag. You definitely don't want to give anybody who's got that kind of official markings on their equipment. You don't want to give them your cargo. And the same is going to go for rental equipment. If a driver shows up and has a rental tractor, you're not going to want to give them that because that's obviously not their official tractor for their carrier. And you're not going to have identifying markings for the likely tractor that will be carrying that all the way across the country. Another indication that you can see just by taking a look is this going to be a cross-country trip? Are you going to be traveling more than 1,000 miles? And if so, did this driver just show up with a day cab, meaning that there's no sleeper or bunk in the back of that cab? If so, I'd be highly suspicious as to how that driver plans to make it a 2 or 3 day journey all the way across the country. The best case scenario in something like that is that's probably a short haul local driver who's going to take it and stage it and have it be picked up by a long haul driver. And if that's the case, you definitely want to know that, and you can ask those questions at origin. But if anything seems fishy at that point, it's always a good idea to just refuse that load. Don't let that driver take that load. Get somebody out there that you trust a little bit more than that. One of the other things that we always tell people to keep a lookout for is one of the main ones that we're seeing almost ubiquitously across trailers coming in nowadays is what we're calling tamper-prone seal hasps. Now, if you look at this picture here, the nut and bolt that is circled in red, typically those are rivets, meaning that they cannot be removed without some sort of major drilling or major tools. When you see nuts and bolts on those seal hasps, it allows the drivers, the carriers, any warehouse personnel, or anyone at a truck stop really, to just unscrew that nut and gain access to the trailer without breaking the seal, meaning that at best, it's very likely that that shipment's going to be double loaded and have more cargo inserted onto that load so that that carrier can charge twice for the trip that they're about to take. The worst case scenario, of course, is that they're planning on actually pilfering or stealing the entire load and delivering it to its destination as though it's intact, with the seal intact, thereby claiming that they didn't tamper with the load. So anytime you see nuts instead of rivets, what we are referring to as tamper-prone seal hasps, that is a huge red flag, and you definitely want to refuse any loads that are going to be transported in trailers that are equipped like that. Now, going a little bit deeper, beyond what you can actually just see at a glance, doing a little bit of due diligence always helps. So not only making sure that the tractor, trailer, driver, and carrier information that you were provided before pickup matches who arrives to actually pick up the cargo on the day of, you want to make sure that all that information also matches with the publicly available information on safer.gov. So you can look up the US DOT number for that carrier and make sure that everything matches. Make sure that the phone number that you were given matches the official business phone number. Make sure that the address that you were given or that are on the letterheads matches the official business address, so that you can ensure that it's not actually somebody posing as that carrier or stealing that carrier's identity in order to obtain your freight. Some of the other things that you can notice, especially over time, is multiple trailer numbers within the same carrier that have the same unit number. So a carrier has different unit numbers on their trailer. For example, trailer 101, trailer 102, trailer 103, etc., so that they can tell the difference between all those pieces of equipment without actually having to be there or without having to look at it. So if a carrier has multiple trailer number 101s or 123s or whatever it may be, there's really only one purpose for that, and that purpose is deception. We've seen that happen a lot because we've seen some of these criminals actually transload out of one trailer into another, or double load with legitimate cargo into this. That way they can deliver at two different locations and have the same trailer number arrive, even though it might not be the same trailer number that departed origin. Another one that we've seen actually very recently is inner and outer unit numbers not matching on trailers or containers. And the reason for that, again, is only deception. That's the only reason somebody would practice something like that. And the way that works is whenever you're copying down trailer information at origin, typically that's done when the trailer is backed up to the loading bay and is being loaded. And usually the trailer number is painted on the inside of the trailer on the side. So usually it's copied down from there. And at that time, the trailer doors are opened all the way around, thereby blocking any identifying markings that might be on the trailer doors or on the tail of the trailer itself. And if you're copying down the wrong number and then that trailer goes missing and you're sending somebody out to recover that, they're going to be looking for whatever number you told them. And if you copied that down off the inside and that doesn't match the number that's on the outside, that's going to hinder your response capabilities and your ability to recover that cargo. And once again, there's only one reason that the numbers inside would not match the numbers outside, and that's for some form of deception. So you definitely want to keep an eye out for those types of things. I'm seeing some comments in here. Somebody joining from Mount Juliet, Tennessee. Awesome to see. Where else is everybody else joining from? I'd love to hear that. And data consistency is key. That is absolutely correct. One of the ways that you can guard against this is by taking thorough documentation at origin. You should be getting pictures. One of the ways to defeat actually the mismatched numbers from the inside and the outside of the trailer is to make sure that one of your standard operating procedures is to take pictures, thorough pictures of the tractor and the trailer and the seal and any identifying markings at origin. Keeping those on file in case there is a need for a recovery. Having those pictures accessible is always great to be able to hand off to law enforcement, because if you just tell them that white conventional trailer number 123 is traveling down the highway is stolen, thousands of those white trailers may be traveling down any stretch of highway at any given time. So that's going to be a lot harder to spot than if you can show them an actual picture that has identifying markings. Maybe that trailer has a skirt on it or some sort of special identifying mud flaps. All these things help the officers identify something when it's out on the road. By the way, if anyone has any questions while I'm going through this, feel free to go ahead and ask them. We're going to have some time at the end for Q&A, and if I'm not able to get to any of those questions, I'll definitely come through and answer them in the comments after this has ended. So what do these drivers do, or what do these carriers do once they've left your origin with this cargo and you might not be able to identify it anymore? Well, the first thing is, they might just double broker it to another carrier who's then going to disappear with that freight, and you're not going to have that information. They may transload it into a different piece of equipment, a completely different trailer, or they may double load it. Double loading is really your best case scenario. And a lot of people think that double loading is harmless, but double loading does expose your cargo to more eyes than you want to see it, especially if it's sensitive cargo or desirable cargo. You're disrupting the chain of custody, and it can actually get quite dangerous there. So it looks like we're actually almost done with the red flags here. So what I want to do is go ahead and talk about a couple of other trends that I've seen. One of those trends has specifically to do with these strategic or fraudulent theft methods. Primarily, we've seen them in Southern California. That's where they're practiced with the greatest volume, right? We've seen it occasionally in other parts of the country, but it's not really standard practice. And carriers there are starting to get pretty good at their due diligence and performing vetting on their carriers and their drivers. But what we're starting to see is that these thieves, some of these same crews, are taking this activity farther east into the U.S. We've seen it at East Coast port cities, and we've seen it in Indiana and Illinois, where some of these same actors and same crews are setting up fraudulent carrier identities. A lot of them are linked with the same physical address. A lot of them are linked with the same phone number. So this goes into some of the more thorough due diligence that you can do. Once you've looked up to make sure that that carrier phone number matches on safer.gov, go ahead and run that phone number through just a general Google search and see if it pops up to other businesses. If it does, are those other businesses suspicious? Are they 4 or 5 other trucking companies that are all operating under the same phone number? That's something you definitely want to take note of and probably not tender that load to that driver. But like I said, we are seeing these methods move east. We do expect that what's going to happen is that they're setting these up so that once they've made their double loading trips from the West Coast to the East Coast, they can then do the same strategic theft and double loading from the East Coast back to the West Coast to make both sides of the round trip as profitable as they can. Some of the other things that we're seeing lately in terms of specific specific product targeting, as always, is consumer electronics. Whatever the latest, greatest generation of consumer electronics is being targeted. High-end apparel and footwear, and very specifically right now, is in the last, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks, we're seeing a targeting of alcohol, specifically liquor, as well as cost-dense food products, likely linked to inflation. One of the other things that I did want to bring up is that between California and Texas, along the Sonoran Desert and along the outskirts of the Sonoran Desert, we've gotten some intelligence from some law enforcement partners that there are pilferages of trains happening there. What we're hearing is that Mexican cartels are extorting the migrants that they're smuggling across the border and forcing them to steal from train containers and threatening their families unless they pilfer from these trains as a final payment for smuggling them across the border. Now, what they're usually doing is boarding these trains wherever they have to slow down. Trains are mandated that they have to slow down at curves of a certain severity, towns of a certain population, or road crossings of a certain hierarchy. They have to slow down to a certain speed. At that point, it allows people to board those trains, and then they've got plenty of time while they travel through the Sonoran Desert to just shop these containers, open them, see what has desirable cargo, and then they essentially just throw that overboard onto the side of the tracks where it's going to be picked up by other vehicles and gathered so that they can take that cargo off and go ahead and sell it. So something we definitely want everyone to be aware of. We haven't seen that particular activity spread to truck stops, but I wouldn't rule it out, especially if there's a very rural or remote truck stop that isn't very well lit or maybe doesn't have CCTV coverage. You definitely want to take a look at that and just be aware that that's some of the things that are going on. So, guys, I want to thank everybody once again for joining me today and giving me your time and attention. Next month, we will have John Cannon on. We're going to talk about a couple case studies and how the private sector can assist law enforcement in cargo security and cargo recovery. Thank you very much, everybody. You have a great day.